Today I'm going to show you why this EDM track I made works for sync licensing, which is the term used for getting your music onto TV and film. I'm going to walk you through the track, and then I'm going to talk to you about things you can do in your own music to make your songs perfect for the screen. So let's go through the track. Here's a quick demo. So this track is a pretty basic EDM bass house kind of sound. This is a sound that was kind of in the mainstream a few years ago, but it's still generally relevant enough. It hasn't died off like future bass or something like dubstep has. I want to talk to you a little bit about the things in this track that make it good for sync licensing, the things that make it catchy, and the things that make it stick. Now, just a little background on the track. I have had this track for a while, and I released it back in June of this year, 2022. And then about a month later, I found a sync licensing agency that I wanted to submit it to, sent them an email, and got it accepted. This is a really cool thing. Hoping in the future that I can get placed somewhere. But it was really validating to just get straight out of college and start making music that I'm releasing and get it submitted and accepted by sync licensing agencies. So if I can do it, you can do it too. And let's move on with the breakdown here. All of the vocals are splice samples. This is something that I used to do a lot of, and I'm trying to actually work my way out of and be more original in the music I create and hire singers for these EDM tracks that I submit for sync licensing. But this track, I made it a good while ago now, and it is built on splice samples. So that's where I got these vocals. But yeah, let's walk through the rest of the track and talk about it instrumentally. So we start off with the intro of the track with this pad and this little fill here. Instantly start getting some bass in. We're already starting the track right at like 20 seconds. So right at 30 seconds, we're already like into the meat of the track. That's how fast this track builds up. And we'll talk a little bit about those exact sync licensing elements that make this track so perfect for TV and film later. But to talk about the track a little bit more, so we have those pads. And if I were to solo these, here's what they sound like. These are these are massive presets actually. Really simple chords. Here's another pad. I think it's chopped off pretty tightly. This is a Serum preset. And then our other little fill. Then we have these basses going on as well. And you may only be able to hear these if you're wearing headphones, but these two basses are the main foundation of the track. We have one that is very simple. This is just like a sine wave. You're really not going to hear this if you don't have headphones on, but this is the low bass. And then I have one that has more harmonics in it. Then when we get into the drop of the track, here's all the basses we have going on. So this track is very sub heavy, and when we go into the drop, we have all these different basses. And what's important to remember is like when you stack these different instruments together, especially when you're trying to make it something that's super succinct and poppy, like a track for sync licensing, you want to make sure that every element complements each other in a precise and meaningful way. We have this sub layer, then we have this second layer. Then I just barely have this coming in, which has a fourth interval. It's just barely coming in at all, but it adds just some extra melodic kind of meat to it. Then this is where we kind of get into the nasty stuff. So here's the one drop bass I have. And then I have one more here. So if I solo our basses, here's what the whole stack sounds like. So each one of those basses, they don't all sound great by themselves, but when we layer them together, they kind of harmonize together and they make a full ensemble of bass. And then this is all getting side chained and it's getting distorted and stuff like that, but that's more mixing stuff we don't have to get into. Now let's get into our drums a little bit here in this main section. This is what it sounds like. Super simple, 4 on the floor. Splice loops. It doesn't have to be crazy for it to be catchy. This is very simple. I think that's what makes this track work so well. That's the majority of our drums. Actually, in the second part of the drop, it builds up with some more hats and stuff. So like I said, splice loops. I'm going to be honest, this is not my most original, creatively ambitious song. But not every track that I make has to be. Music always serves different purposes, and this purpose of this track is to be really catchy and to be submitted for sync licensing. Yes, there are loops in there. There's vocal samples in there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But just I want to recognize that not every track that you make is equal. Some are for some purposes, and some are for maybe more creatively ambitious other purposes. So let's move on. All right, and then just to add some more accents and stuff, we have a couple of effects coming in and out throughout the track. Then as we build up into the second drop, I think the only thing that changes is that we have this drum loop that's helping us build back up. We kind of rinse and repeat, and then we have the outro of the track, which sounds like this. I forgot to talk about the one bass fill we have. This just adds just a tiny bit of grit to the track. To break down the structure, I have an intro, we have this verse, which is really just a build up. We have a drop, back to a verse, build up, same chorus, 8 bars of an outro, and then we're done. Super simple track. So let's talk about what makes this track perfect for sync licensing. I've hinted at it a little bit, but here, let's get right into it. So the number one thing I think about with this track is that it's straight and to the point. There's really not a lot of fodder in it. Every element has a clear purpose. There's very little to muddy up the mix, and instead of loading it with layers and layers of pad sounds and vocal chops and stuff like that, hoping we make a good sound, each sound pretty much stands on its own. I'm not going to go out and say that every track is a sound design miracle. That's not true here. These sounds are pretty basic in this track, but putting it all together, it really does work. The track also has a clear direction, clear dynamic builds. It's very clear for the listener where they're being guided on the journey of this song. You might call it predictable, but you would also call it functional. And that's super important for sync licensing, is for it to be a functional piece of music that sits behind another narrative, you know, a montage scene in a film or dialogue in a TV show. The music behind it has to be functional. It has to help sell the story of whatever it's being placed under. And then bottom line, the track is kind of catchy too, so obviously that helps, but I'm sure you know that. So I really just wanted to go through this track and talk about these dead simple things that I'm sure you can do in your music as well. I think what's so fun about this track for me is that it didn't take a lot of overthinking. Since then, I've had a few instances, I've had a few songs I've been working on where, wow, I just buried myself in dread and angst trying to get a track to be absolutely perfect. And it's funny because this track has been so much more successful with a fraction of the work of some of the other songs that I've done. So it's kind of funny how that works out sometimes. So if you like what you hear in this song, you can actually go listen to this song right now on Spotify and Apple Music and all the streaming platforms. It's called You Got Me by Dan.mess. It's actually also on this YouTube page as well. And if you're a singer and you need production on your track, I would love to help you out because I specialize in electronic music production for solo artists, and I'm always looking for awesome artists to work with, and I'd love to make a track with you. Thank you so much for checking this out. It's about to be Christmas here, so I hope you have a great holiday. I will catch you next time. Thank you so much, and have a great day.